Hello, everybody, and welcome to Lisa, One Singing Lady Gilliam's LLG, Random but Real. I'm excited to have my guests today, Dr. Maia and Dr. Monica. As you all know, I start out just kind of telling you all about what it is that we're doing. The fact that I usually only talk to people that I actually personally know, but because Dr. Maia has a practice with Dr. Monica and she's, in the field, such related as mine, I thought it would be a great idea to be able to talk to both of them. So I'm super excited to have them here. Dr. Maia and I have known each other for a lot of years. I cannot even count how many.
Please don't.
It's been a lot of years, but we've known each other since we were in junior high school, Alice Steele Junior High School. And so I have been able to kind of see her, in a sense on the sidelines. I thank God for social media because that's how we have been able to remain connected over the years. And basically, I've seen her do so many different things, here on the West Coast as well and back on the East Coast. And so I'm going to allow you both to introduce yourself before we actually get started. So it doesn't matter whichever one wants to go. This is informal and, we are just here to get information. So please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay, well, I'll begin. So yes, Lisa and I met many moons ago in junior high, and now we're all grown up. I'm a board certified pediatrician. I went to school at Howard University for undergrad and medical school. And then, as she mentioned, moved to Los Angeles and did my training at Children's Hospital Los Angeles. And in LA, met my husband, got married, had kids, moved back to the East Coast to Georgia, where I met Dr. Monica. And I, of course, will let her tell her story, and then we'll talk about how and why we met and how we got here.
Hey, I'm Monica. I don't even know really where to start. So I have a PhD, not an MD. I have a PhD in health communication and research. I grew up in Reston, Virginia, went to school at Michigan, actually was overlapping with Maia in Southern California, but we didn't actually know each other back then. And then moved to the Atlanta area, or back to the Atlanta area because of my husband's job at the time. And that's when Maia and I met and connected because of our kid. Maia, you want me to just go ahead and launch into that?
Sure.
Story? Okay. So at the time, my son was like 2.5 going on 3, and was struggling with being able to manage in preschools and getting kicked out, behavioral issues. And a friend of a friend was like, we need to talk to my best friend's wife. She's a doctor out where you guys live. Her son's got some challenges as well. I think you guys should connect. So he did actually, he randomly invited me to one of the kids' birthday parties. I was like, I can't go to her child's birthday party. I don't even know her. He was like, no, she's cool. But later. And we just started sharing information. Like, this is what's going on. This is what I've done. And she'd be like, well, have you done this? Have you thought about that? And some things I had, some things I hadn't, some things I was sharing with her that she hadn't. And then just became a really great information exchange, turned to friendship, turned into, as time went on, I was helping out different friends and helping them with their kids. And she had been helping different friends with their kids. And all of a sudden we were like, you know what? There is such a need for this. So many people are lacking really critical information that they're not getting from traditional healthcare sources. Let's come together and actually make this a practice and a business. And so that's really how M Center was born.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited that you two met each other. Like I said, I've said it several times for people who have actually been following me since I've been doing this September. Mental health and physical health are so important and they are connected. And unfortunately, within the African American community, a lot of times we try to separate it, and we don't think it's anything wrong with our children. They're just having mood swings for no reason at all. Like literally, there's some parents who kind of think that they've actually said it. in counseling sessions that I've been in or speaking, with the families. And I think it's really important to be able to openly talk about it and try to break or take away the stigma that's associated, especially with the mental health. We'll go to the doctor for our physical all day, every day. But when it's mental, it's just like, nothing's wrong with me. I'm good, and a lot of times that's not the case. So I mentioned, right before this, that I was a counselor for about 20 years. And a lot of my students had ADHD. That was their diagnosis. Some were correctly diagnosed, some were not. I actually am a proponent for medicine if it's needed. I think that you should try other things first. And so I wanted to get you all's take about that when it comes to certain diagnoses. You can name other ones if you like, but specifically with ADHD, because there are going to be some parents watching. Children have that diagnosis and they're just like, I don't know what I should do. What do you all think?
I want to lead with, we both have a child that struggles with ADHD. I have one that struggles with ADHD and I have one on the spectrum. So whatever we say is going to be from the perspective of a parent as well as a healthcare provider. We've been on both sides of the table. Go ahead, Monica.
I love the ADHD wheelhouse. That's why I was like, oh, can I talk?
Yeah, I know better.
So yes, I believe in medication for ADHD if necessary. But here's what I would say to your point, Lisa. I think it often becomes the first line of defense before other things are taken into account. And our approach as a practice is the medication isn't going to solve the underlying root cause of how we got here. 99% of the time, there are nutritional imbalances, there is gut dysbiosis of things that are imbalanced in the gut. There may have been toxicities, whether heavy metals, whether mold. There may be underlying traumas that no one has addressed. All of these things that have played a part and a role into why the child is struggling and why their brain is working a little differently. The medication is just putting a Band-Aid on a bullet hole, and even oftentimes the medication can sometimes cause other unwanted side effects that the parents don't want. It's not effective. So unless you are addressing the underlying cause of all the other things that are also going on with the child, on top of what kind of accommodations are happening at school, what kind of accommodations are happening at home, are there, cognitive behavioral therapy, neurofeedback? There, ADHD has to be approached from multiple vantage points. No one thing is going to really move the needle one by one in terms of how to help shift how ADHD is impacting that child. So I do
want to interject exactly what she said. Even in Western medicine textbook, it will tell you, and this is, when I was in school 30 years ago, the treatment is not the medication. The medication is given to give you a window of opportunity to grasp their attention while you work on all those other things that she was just referring, when they learn how to modify their own behavior, while like us looks at all the other medical contributing factors as well. You need it, you need it. You want to, keep your child from getting kicked out of school, able to focus and learn while all those things are happening. We understand that, but that's not the end all be all. There's so much more that goes into it. And it's very clear in the textbooks, but in this fast paced, patients in 6 and 8 minutes, people just write the script, aren't doing the due diligence to see the child as a whole.
I think that happens a lot too with what I've seen, psychiatrists. I understand that their job is to medicate, get in, get out, but I have become much more fonder of those who actually really do care about their patients and really try to find out what's going on, and not just, like I said, that's not my first go-to. I definitely think that you have to go through the whole process. And so although I'm not a doctor, I'm glad that I heard doctors say that. And so what would you say to a parent who is just, because fear sometimes is what hinders them from actually, allowing their child to just even seek even they don't even want to take them to their primary doctor because they don't want to hear it. So what would you say to parents, who are just apprehensive about that?
Well, my personal attitude, and when I had my son evaluated, I could tell the team of people were, ooh, he might could have, just tell me what it is. And I literally said to them, I don't care what you call it, just give my baby what he needs. And then you could feel the weight lifting off of everyone's shoulders in the room, and they all went, okay, this is what's going on, and this is what needs to be done. There's no shame in that. We all need help. Nobody's perfect. It takes a village. The end goal is that your child or you lives and thrives to the best of their ability. And in order to do that, yes, you do have to be vulnerable and open to getting the diagnosis, the recommendations, whatever it is, so that you can get what you need.
So
Yeah.
go on, Dr. Monica.
No, I was just going to second that and really just say you don't have time to be scared, honestly. We absolutely have the most success the younger we get our hands on the kids.
Yes.
And while that little brain is still rapidly developing, and while you're able to kind of have more correction and more control over what they eat, what you can get in their bodies, all that is much easier when they're younger. And we're able to move the needle much farther, much faster, the younger that they are. So put your fear into motion. I'm not saying put it aside. Put your fear into action, and action will use that fear to motivate you to move forward to get your kid the assistance and the services they need.
And I will say it's very, very common. I mean, the diagnosis of autism went from 1 in 10,000 to now, I think, 1 in 36 kids. So there are a lot of children that have what we call hitches in the giddy up or little special sauce. It's so common. There really isn't anything to be ashamed of. You're not alone. I think if we talked about it more and more people realized how common it is, then that would also remove the stigma.
Absolutely.
It's so common. And it's not lost on me that our children in particular are stigmatized, good, bad, or ugly, more likely to be labeled a problem child when actually they're gifted and they're bored to death. So sometimes those behaviors could be something else. So let's find out what it is so that, again, we can address what's actually needed.
Absolutely.
Before they are stigmatized with being the bad kid and always getting called out or sent to the principal's office or put in the corner or whatever is happening now. Let's figure out what it is so that we can flip this around on its head for their benefit.
Right. One of the things that would happen oftentimes to kids on my caseload, and I saw all, different cultures, was that they were often, like you said, sent to the principal's office or the VP's office. And I was working at an alternative school. They're there for a reason. They were kicked out of their school or placed there because a lot of them had trauma, as you mentioned earlier, Dr. Monica. And so how is sending them to the principal? I'm like, here I am, a counselor on their caseload. Send them to me first. I'm not, I can't, expel them or suspend them, but I want to. I wanted to talk to them first. I wanted to find out what was going on. It could have been that day, something happened that triggered them. And that, and that happens to any child. Like, it doesn't have to be a regular or a repetitive situation. It might be just something that happened that day. And for whatever reason, they flicked off. So give them an opportunity. Just because they're there also at alternative school doesn't mean that they are bad people. You know what I mean? And so I do agree that we do have to talk about it. I actually like working with the alternative population. I was in Charles County, but I was a third party. So I was a counselor placed in the schools. Now I'm a transition teacher or a coordinator in the PG County school system, another alternative school system. And it was like God handpicked the job for me. I'm responsible for doing the intake. So I get the information, head on when they first get there. They're high school, but it's still the same type of concept because high school students have, sometimes diagnosis too. So what age range do you all actually see in your practice?
Well, we have a regular well and acute side where we just see, kids that may not have any issues, or we may pick them up. So literally newborn through young adulthood, actually, because there aren't any adult doctors that specialize in people with special needs, because
Wow.
typically, at least historically, they weren't integrating into society as well. So, especially decades ago, they were institutionalized versus being given tools where they can actually be a part of our community. So, and it really depends. I mean, we have infants that have been brought to us for very significant, severe, life-changing medical diagnoses. We saw a 4-month-old today. We've seen others that are just as young, and sometimes they're families where mom and or dad have a chronic illness, and they're concerned about the likelihood or propensity that their child may develop something. So what are the types of things we can put in place now to maybe push that back or prevent that from developing as well? So in terms of children on the spectrum and ADHD, we do tend to get them more often preschool years, because that's when they're put into a daycare or a preschool setting and somebody goes, and that's when prompt the evaluation.
Can you explain, I'm sorry, the spectrum? I understand what it is, but for those that might be watching and don't understand what the spectrum is, could you talk about?
Yeah, so autism spectrum disorder is just like it sounds, it's a spectrum. And unfortunately, there's only one label for so many things. So
I'm so mad they changed that, y'all. Just honestly,
there's literally like 100 diagnoses for a finger injury, right finger, right first finger, right, and there's only one for all of autism. So it's a constellation of behavioral diagnostics for psychological issues. So it's someone who observes and puts together a list of the behaviors that they're seeing, and they put them under the umbrella of autism. The problem I have with the diagnosis is it doesn't tell you what's wrong. So if you say I have an 8-year-old with autism, what does that mean? Are they verbal? Are they nonverbal? Are they pre-verbal? Are they potty trained? Are they, what is going on with them in terms of their capabilities and medical complications? So 70 to 80% of children on the spectrum have a gastrointestinal disorder. And when you address that, they feel better and their behavior improves. So for us, the behaviors are not the problem. They're a symptom of a problem. And as you peel back what's actually wrong and start to repair the broken physiology, the behaviors improve, especially when you have a child that's not able to express how they're feeling. They're going to express it. If they can't do it verbally, it comes out another way, whether it's a stim, which is a repetitive action that kind of gives them some sense of relief or soothing, whether it's OCD, whether it's self-injurious behavior. So sometimes kids will beat their heads on the wall because their stomach hurts so bad and they just don't know what else to do. Screaming, crying, eloping, running off because something is irritating their senses. So again, a lot of the behaviors that we label as autism are really just a symptom of deeper issues.
Very true. Very true. So what do you all see once the parents actually come and you tell them, whatever the diagnosis may be? What has been your experience of their information? One, because your parents who have gone through something similar, do you feel like that plays a part in even the way that you share the information with the parents?
So most of the time, parents are coming to us with a diagnosis.
Okay.
Yeah, they are not coming to us to seek that. They have received it. And some parents come to us very shortly thereafter, whether they were referred for a friend or maybe a Facebook, or there are a lot of Facebook groups that they quickly out the gate tell them to go into biomedicine or functional medicine. More times than not, though, we have parents that have gone to their pediatrician, have sought more traditional routes of care, and did not yield the gains and the benefits they were hoping for. And then it led them to more alternative routes, and then they end up coming to see us. But very rarely do we get the kids. They're not often coming to us seeking a diagnosis. They're usually coming to us with one, and other traditional methods of help were not beneficial.
And to that point, so the standard of care is to just refer to speech, occupational therapy, physical therapy, and applied behavioral analysis, or ABA. And so as a parent, what I share with these families is all of those therapies are fantastic. But what I realized was, for me, it was like asking my son to scuba dive through mud. Until I fixed the broken physiology undergirding all of his issues. That is what helped thin the water so he could get farther faster for all of the effort he was putting out.
Wow.
So, my story is my son got a very severe illness just before he turned 2, and within months he was completely mute. He wasn't talking at all. And this is a child that I was pushing him in the swing at 11 months, and I started counting, and he joined in. And I was like, wait a minute, did anybody else hear that? Very, very bright child, very, very cuddly, loving child, and my child just disappeared.
Wow.
So I went to my pediatrician, who, he barely registered on the screening little guide we did, and she said, he's sitting there letting you read him a book, but you know what? Let's err on the side of caution. We'll do all the referrals. In the meanwhile, let's feed the brain. Let's feed his brain. So she told me to go get some omega-3s. Fine. So I ran straight to the store. I gave him 1 dose. We did the rest of the day, put him to bed, woke up in the morning. I walked in the room. I called his name, and boom, he looked me dead in the eye. He had not done that for months. He had avoided my eye contact whenever I got close to his face. So that's when I said, oh, there's something here. The very next day, my friend had already gone on Amazon and had a case of books delivered to my doorstep about how autism is treatable. So I was always a kid in school with, why come? How, I'm always asking questions. So I was reading it with a grain of salt, but things were clicking and making sense. Went online, did my research, took everything back to my pediatrician, like, hey, this is what I'm reading. This is what the CDC website says. Can we try this? She said, okay, let's give it a try. And things just started really starting to click. And I started to see what I call flashes of brilliance and getting my son back. And so here we are, still on this journey. We still have some layers of the onion to peel back, but, a lot of things that people will tell you your child will never be able to do, he's doing, and he's not done.
That's awesome.
And so because of what I walked through with him, in hindsight, I was like, ooh, my daughter has a little sprinkle too. Going on here too. So I started giving her some of the supplements and have been taking her to some of the evaluations, and I've seen her blossom as well. So my daughter's a little bit more very mild ADHD and some performance anxiety. But it can be kind of debilitating at certain times. And so, it behooved me to get it addressed for her as well, to make the rest of her life easier. One thing I do want to point out is how often girls get missed with these diagnoses. Because boys wiggle, they make noise. So they're going to get the attention. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. So they get, quote, in trouble. So girls tend to be a little bit more wanting to please, not rock the boat. And so, I discovered a lot of stuff when I started paying even more close attention. I homeschooled. And so I picked up on some things that I was like, that's not, something's up. And everyone tried to tell me, you're making it up. There's nothing there. I'm like, nope, something's wrong. And sure enough, I got the evaluation, got her what she needed, and here we are. So I do want to say that, sometimes we get the girls later, and they just get missed because they're quiet. And they don't rock the boat too much more often than not. So, pay attention to girls too. And what happens oftentimes is then they end up as a teenager with anxiety or depression because they've been, on edge for the last 10 years trying to keep it together and perform without, the extra support that they actually needed as well.
Absolutely. Dr. Monica, did you want to say something?
No, I agree with everything she said.
All right. Just want to make sure I get that in. So first of all, I commend you both because like I said, I've been on the other side. I'm not a parent, but I've been working with children since I was 12. So I feel like one. I feel like I'm adoptive mom to kind of everybody. But a lot of people, and they forget that I actually did go to get my master's degree. Like, I'm not just speaking off the side of my neck. I do know what I'm talking about. But because I don't have any children, you don't know what you're talking about. And I've actually been told that. So, that's been hard for me. But I have seen sometimes with, honestly, the worst part of being the counselor was the parents. They wouldn't listen to what was said. And even because you all, are doctors, a lot of times it's really hard to get to you all because you're so bright. So I appreciate, I'm just being on. I told you it's random but real, but I'm gonna tell you all the truth. So I appreciate the fact that you all, were willing to not just see, oh, there's something going on here, but you went through the process to make sure that your children are, able to be successful. And I know that's what parents should do, but let's be honest, that's not what a lot of parents do.
And it's hard. Let me tell you,
That's what I was going to
as
say
a
too.
healthcare professional, I can't tell you how many times I've been on the phone for an hour and a half, getting transferred 6 times to talk to somebody to get something covered for my child, for instance. But I'm able to advocate for myself. I asked my husband to call one time. I gave him a 5-word question just because I wanted him to see what it was like. Within 8 minutes, he was like, "Babe, I can't do this. Can you call everyone and for me?" Because they have a script that they follow. And the goal is to not pay for stuff. To be honest, that's how they keep their bottom line in the black. So you have to be able to advocate for yourself or bring someone with you that can. My brother goes with my mother to every doctor's appointment so they can tell me what's going on. I've had to get on the phone with him on a doctor's appointment. Like, well, what about this? Why you don't do this? Why, So it is difficult to navigate. It is not easy, but you deserve the appropriate care.
Absolutely.
Bring someone with you, bring a pen and a pad. Every new patient that comes to us, we send them home with a notebook so they can put all their lab results, all their recommendations, their referrals, their prescriptions, everything can go in one place. So when they go to another specialist and they ask them a question, here, this is what we're doing. This is what we're taking. These are the specialists I'm seeing.
Yeah, being educated and being equipped. Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you. Everything in writing because this is heavy stuff. And there are times I'm talking to see the eyes glaze over. They are not processing anything I'm saying right now. So we give it to them in writing so that they can have something to refer to. And if they have questions after they've read through everything, then they can reach out again. But it's a lot.
It's a lot.
It sounds like it. Like, I mean, I know it is from the, like I said, the counseling perspective or even the educator perspective. I tell people the whole, like, I don't ever, and I mean that, want to go back to the K through 12 classroom again. I did it before. I'm good. I'd rather be a counselor in the schools if I decide to go back to that. But it is a lot. And, like I said, working with the population that I work with who've experienced a lot of trauma, but don't know how to process it. They don't know what empathy is. They don't know even what sympathy is. They don't know how to say, you know what, I'm hurting, Miss Gilliam. It's like you have to drag everything out of them. Another, I guess, topic or diagnosis that isn't actually diagnosed as anxiety in children. And so what would you say some of the symptoms that, are seen or not seen that are kind of misdiagnosed when it comes to anxiety in children or young adults?
And maybe this is challenging because we're in it, so we do recognize it as anxiety. And because my son, along with his ADHD, long before I realized it was ADHD, I peeped the anxiety when he was little.
Wow.
Like apprehension with new places, sometimes that was irrational. It was anxiety, like having to talk him through, like, no, but it's okay. It's just like this thing, but it was all anxiety. So there were lots of little things, even when we were trying these new preschool environments, and he'd be really reticent to come into the classroom, and we'd have to introduce him in these really short doses, and then he'd end up being okay until certain things changed, and then it was all anxiety for him. And him building trust with different people in new environments. I mean, the underlying root of many of his behavioral issues were a function of anxiety. And then we would come to learn the people who saw it and recognized it as such and approached him in that way had far better outcomes in terms of managing his behavior than the people who wanted to just make it a behavioral issue or make it an ADHD issue or whatever other label they wanted to put on it. When they realized the actual root was anxiety, they were able to reach him and to get to him differently. Because so many of our kids honestly have a greater primary diagnosis, I think the anxiety, sometimes depression, some of those other things come secondary and comorbid to that. And you do see with ADHD in particular, you see anxiety and depression run comorbid with it very, very often. As with spectrum disorders, you see, in fact, many of them kind of run comorbid with one another.
In the family too, you'll know.
Yes, you definitely see that. Parents who have a history of anxiety, depression, bipolar, you'll see a lot of postpartum sometimes, PTSD. So you do see a lot of those things ride together. And you also see, and what we don't talk about a lot is the PTSD of the parents with special needs kids. That PTSD is real. And it is something we do try to talk to with parents because it starts to manifest in how they interact with their children in ways that they don't understand necessarily, and how sometimes it can be counterproductive to the benefit and the healing of said child. We had a patient not long ago, and we were talking to the mom. The child suffers very greatly from anxiety. The mom now has a lot of PTSD and anxiety around the child's issues, and then they start to feed off of one another. And I was like, you have to shift your energy and your thought around these things because they're directly impacting her, and she's feeding off of that and vice versa. But it's a real thing. When my son was in school, COVID's been good for my PTSD because he's been not at school. But when he was, if my phone rang during the day, my PTSD from is it the school calling me because there's an issue is real. And living in that fight or flight constantly, and the energy you put out, and then you're tired, your adrenals are messed up, your cortisol's a hot mess, you're not sleeping at night. You can't be the best parent that you want to be. You're exhausted and you're living in that state constantly. Your child feeds off of that. And then you unconsciously, in ways you don't intend, because you're putting all your little effort into healing the tiny human, comes counterproductive. And then you hear about self-care and you're like, at what point and what time in the day do I have for any of that? And then it becomes a vicious cycle. I think this was not
real. The physiology of a parent with a child on the spectrum or with special needs is equivalent to one of a post-war veteran. In terms of what she's describing, the fight or flight, just always on edge. Are they going to run in the street? Are they going to, wake up at 3 a.m. and be playing on the freeway outside? And these are real fears and concerns. They're too quiet. What's happening? Are they choking? Anything. And like she said, every time the phone rings, she's like, and your heart goes bloop, bloop, because you're like, is it the school? Is it what's going on? So you're never able to relax, and that takes its toll on your body. And it, like she said, everyone kind of pings off of each other. And also what we find is the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right? So if the child has something, 9 times out of 10, one or both parents are having some challenges or had some challenges that were ignored as a child also, especially back then, because if you didn't say it out loud, it didn't exist. And so a lot of our parents and grandparents had challenges that were glossed over or treated as behavioral issues, and they just got excessive whoopings, which caused a whole other set of issues, versus getting the support that they need. And then also there's the dynamic of when there's a sibling. So much attention is placed on the child that's struggling that sometimes the sibling has their own struggles because they're being kind of ignored or neglected or just kind of pushed to the side. So we help the family because they all are a unit working together. And oftentimes, if there's a vitamin or supplement, so everything that we recommend, number one, we have research papers to support, evidence-based. We aren't just making up stuff or experimenting on your child. And many of the things we've tried ourselves or tried it before we gave it to our own kids. So we'll have parents that are like, ooh, maybe I need some adrenal support. So they'll try it too when we give them something, and they start to feel better. So we do have other practitioners that we work with that do see some of the parents, because sometimes we'll just say, you know what, mom, you know what, dad, you need to go see this person because you have some of the same struggles, or maybe different ones, but they're just as significant. And when you feel better, everybody around you is affected positively, and vice versa.
Yeah. It reminds me of when I call, my parents, like if it's not for anything bad, I start off with that. I'm like, just so you know, I'm not calling because they did anything wrong. I'm just calling it out because I understand it. I've often said that every counselor that works in the school system, it's great if you could be a teacher, but more importantly, every teacher that's in the school system needs to take psychology or counseling courses, not just basic information, so that what your words are doing. I'm also like the restorative approaches psych coordinator. And so just ensure that our words are not punitive or damaging, but encouraging in the process. You do have to correct people's behavior. You can't just allow them to just get away with whatever they're doing if it's incorrect. But the way that we say things does have or can play a part, in our mental health. I do this, I'm a part of a collective I started called Stigma Breakers, and we show every first Wednesday. The show is dedicated to that, or to us talking about different things. And Danya Parker, one of the speakers, she's like, your mental health is connected to everything. Like, those are her words, and no truer words have ever been spoken. But because we often compartmentalize it, and we're just like, no, this is just like, just a physical issue or a physical concern. It has nothing to do with my mental health. I know we spoke about it before, but how can we drive that point home so that parents understand, so that even, because, you said you see some young adults, at some point I don't understand how, like, I have to ask, do you have an IEP or a 504? And this is high school, and most of them don't know. How did you get to high school and you don't know that you had it? Like, this is not a conversation. Like, you've been in the meetings, like, and this is no shade at all. Like, I believe that you're your best advocate. And, if you've gotten to high school and you don't know what your concerns are, or what you need help with, or, what's stopping you, if you don't know, how is somebody else supposed to advocate even more? So, I know I said a lot in there. Either one can tackle it.
We want to say, again, going back to advocacy, people don't know, and they don't know their rights. And so, when I first started practice, I had a little template, 2-sentence letter that I would just fill in the kid's name and sign it. According to XYZ ordinance, this child needs an IEP. They long and short of it, because they would say, well, no, the school told me that, I need a note from the doctor. Nope. By law, here's the law number. All they need is a letter from you in writing. So sign right here and take that to the principal's office. People don't know what they're entitled to, what their rights are as a citizen, and a student enrolled in the school, for starters. So that's one thing that, unfortunately, I've had to do some educating of families for. I wish there was a better way to do it, like PTA night or back to school night. These things,
but they have to come. They don't come.
There's that.
I told y'all I'm gonna keep it real, but not all parents, just a lot of.
Yeah. And then to that point, it's not always because they don't want to. Sometimes it's because they're going through that, trying to keep in, and they're not even recognizing each other from a distance afar. So, I mean, there are layers there also with support. I mean, kids are now eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner at school, and if they don't eat there, they're not getting food. Like, that's a problem.
It is.
That's a problem. And you can't. And then what they're getting for food is not nutritious. So how is the brain supposed to work when literally studies show the cardboard the food came in is more nutritious than the food? And I'm not exaggerating. There are more minerals in the cardboard sometimes than the actual food. Wow. So there's that. So, not having appropriate books, tablets, computers, whatever it is, especially this pandemic, has really highlighted the chasm between, the haves and the have-nots, for lack of a better word. People that don't have Wi-Fi, they don't have access, and let alone do I have a piece of equipment for all three of my kids. Like, I have a phone, but how am I supposed to have three kids on virtual learning? I can't afford three computers. And then I've heard families where they have them and the special needs child broke one.
Right.
So there's just a lot of layers of challenges, and we as a community need to come together and help fill in those gaps. I know you said a lot. That was one thing.
No, Lisa, circling back to your question about how do we drive home the point of mental health being like critical. I'm a firm believer that everybody needs to be in therapy. Like, that's kind of I believe that
I go.
if we don't need therapy, you probably actually need to be in therapy today. Okay.
Absolutely. High five.
Okay. The brain is an organ just like every other organ in your body. Mm-hmm. And the power of the mind over everything else in your body is profound. And there are millions of studies attesting to the mind-body-spirit connection. So to think that you don't need to regularly be supporting your mind and your thoughts, you have done such an incredible disservice to yourself and especially your children. The era that these kids are growing up in terms of social media and the excessive screen time and cyberbullying, all of the things that they're bombarded with that we didn't have growing up.
True.
Even more reason I think every kid also needs to be in therapy.
Mm-hmm. And have a safe like this. Nobody wakes up like that.
Nobody.
But that's what they're thinking. And I right. My daughter, like, this is what they really look like. Like, this is what they don't look like this all day. That's $1 million face beat, hair weave, and outfit. Like,
right.
She doesn't really look like that. He doesn't really look like that. So let's not aspire to what's not even real. And this is what they see all day, every day, though.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just a really firm believer in everyone needs therapy. Kids need therapy. I think, kids will be more apt to go to therapy if their parents are open about the fact that they go to therapy. Like, in just overall breaking that stigma. But like you mentioned before, especially in the Black community, we're so ingrained with what happens at home stays at home. We don't talk about our business out in the street. And especially, as Black women, being a strong Black woman, yes, is this mantra, but later on in life that translates into, we don't get to be sad. We don't get to be tired. We don't get to be weak. We don't get to cry. And
we don't get to be human.
We don't get to be human, as opposed to shifting the narrative into finding strength and vulnerability. There is strength in being able to admit that struggle and still then persevere. There is strength in community. There is strength in finding help and support through friends, through family, through other professionals that sometimes might have a better and different approach than your friends and your family. And sometimes you need an outside person without the biases, with an outside person who doesn't have the same love and attachment for you in hearing some of your hurts and pains and challenges. There is a lot of benefit in speaking to a third party who does not have that same attachment to you. I'm just a firm believer everybody needs.
And kind of on that note, so Lisa, you remember Amani. So, she PhD Berkeley, and her focus is on maternal fetal health. And so she was preparing to do a study on that with women of color, Black women in particular. And they had to have a focus group before they could even start the study to figure out how we can identify stress. Because things that other people would crumble under is stuff that we just do every day and don't even think about. No, that's a lot. That's stress. That's not a
Tuesday.
You're not supposed to carry the whole daggone neighborhood on your back, right. So being able to even acknowledge, like, I do have a lot on my plate and this is not okay. I need support. I need help. I'm not Superwoman. Full disclosure, when I had my son, I was like, you know what? I'm not doing it. I'm not going to work 50 hours a week killing myself, raising 2 kids. I'm not Superwoman. Something's got to give, and for once, it's not going to be me. So when we moved back east, out of expensive as all get out LA, I stayed home. And I was able to stay home. We made some adjustments, but I was able to stay home and be there for my children in that very formative period in their lives, which also helped me pick up what was going on with both of them. And I know that may not be an option for everyone, but I just want everyone to know that all of that stuff on your plate is a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It is a lot, and you don't have to be invincible. We're not.
We're not.
We're not. So reach out, do community. I think that's one thing that growing up, we had that this generation doesn't. Literally, I would be walking home from somebody's house and my mother would have gotten the call that if she's on such and such street, she'll be there in about a minute. Like we did community. Everybody knew everybody. Half my teachers lived in my neighborhood. I can't do nothing. But we were really a neighborhood and a network, and everybody knew everybody. I can go to my mom's neighborhood now, and I can tell you who lived there, who lives there, and their parents are still there. We did community. Mm-hmm. I can still go to the corner and get the spare key if I get locked out. Like there was a sense of community, and we helped each other. And I would like to see that come back.
Absolutely. Like the reason why I said I started this is to teach other people about the symptoms of depression in order to prevent suicide. But the reason why it's so important to me is because I wanted to commit suicide. And back when you knew me, Maia, and you probably didn't know that then, I didn't talk about it to, I think the first person I told was another classmate, Conica. And that was not until 10th grade. So that was after junior high. You know what I mean? And one day I just started sharing her to, actually, you know what? No, I told her, so I told y'all this random but real. I shared my life story. So I was molested, sexually abused when I was younger, and Conica was the first person I told. But that's part of the trauma that I experienced. Went to college and got date raped freshman year in college, and then found my grandmother deceased, 95, and then my mom, had to be, resuscitated in front of me, and she died 2 weeks later. I was in the room when she took her last breath. So although I don't have children, a lot of people think that I don't have any child. What do you have anything to worry about? I just told y'all what is still and I'm still not healed. My mom died. It will be 4 years in October, and I'm still not okay. Yesterday, we found out a coworker of ours died yesterday, and he was really, really kind to me. I've only been at this job for a year. So every day with everything that's going on, besides the fact that I'm not married, don't have any children. So I've had to do COVID pretty much by myself. It's horrible for me. I'm a huggy person. Like if I met you today, Mark, if you were right here, I would have hugged you. Like
and she would have hugged you right back. You
know what I'm saying? So that's why this platform is so important to me, because I really think that I agree. Everybody can benefit from therapy. I share my story so other people can be healed. I don't want people to have to go through what I've gone through or what I'm still going through. I do still go to counseling. I don't know if I might have to go the rest of my life. That's a lot of trauma. A lot of people I know who were abused and molested and raped stopped learning. But here I am with my master's degree, and I've taken doctoral classes. But I will tell you something, when my mom died, because of the trauma, she was a nurse who took care of everybody. And all of a sudden, she couldn't even speak those last 2 weeks. And it was horrible for me. And I have insomnia, like to the 50th degree, because I see what I can see, the visions, and I can't stop that. And so I tell people, I'll be healed when I'm healed. I can't, they don't understand why I'm still grieving. Well, that's why, it's one thing to find someone deceased. It's another thing to hear about somebody dying. So having platforms like this and having discussions like this is so important to me, because there are so many people who have experienced even far worse than I've experienced. But I definitely stand as an example of someone who keeps going. But what you all were saying earlier, I'm very quick to say, I'm okay. But I'm okay. And literally a couple of weeks ago, I was like, I'm gonna stop telling people that. So my coworker, sometimes she's on, I don't know if she's watching or not. She'll be like, okay, you like really okay? Or you surface okay? Because I've told her, like, I've been lying basically all these years, because people see my pictures, or they, I'm not preaching right now, because that's a whole different story. But I'm a minister, but also I don't want to counsel anymore, because I'm like, I poured out everything to everybody else. This is an informal way for me to still share my opinion, my experience, but not, like I say, these are my opinions, even though a lot of what I'm saying is based on my knowledge as a former counselor. I want people to actually go seek help, go to therapy, get the help that you need for yourself, your children. It's because of what I've learned over the years. But I would clearly say, yep, I'm okay. And it was really because I didn't feel like people cared anymore. They would tell me they were good, but then I would push them away because I was draining them because of all the stuff. But I don't know anybody else who's gone through the level of things that I've gone through. And so, again, that's why I do this. I share my story so other people can be healed. I don't want people to have to go through what I've experienced. And I want people to just have a greater understanding that just because you may present as one way doesn't mean that everything is okay. No one would actually know that I was hurting, that I had my own PTSD, diagnosis, depression, anxiety, if I didn't share it. Because I don't act like I sing. I have, music and, I'm on stages and I'm encouraging other people. So people never really got the time or the chance to really get to know who I was. So I thank you all both for, being willing to be on this and to share your own experiences as mothers, as well as doctors. How can people get in touch with you all?
Well, I want to add one more thing to what you said about, because we were talking about community. And, I'm fine. One thing I have done in the recent years is when I ask somebody, how you doing? I actually listen for the response. I think we do it so much as a knee jerk. How you doing? Fine. But sometimes even when they say fine, you can hear, she's
Absolutely.
fine. So I want to encourage everyone that that's one step we can take as a community. When you ask somebody how they're doing, listen for the answer. And don't knee jerk move on. So sorry, I just wanted to add that. So, so our practice is called the M Center for Pediatric Wellness, and our website is themwellnesscenter.com, THEM and our phone number is 888-381-8556. We also are on Instagram, Facebook as the M Center, and we do plan on putting out more content and info in the upcoming weeks, rather, because there's a need for information and how people can live a healthier lifestyle and not succumb to a lot of disease processes and illnesses that we see running so rampant. It does not have to be this way. And there are things that can change now and kind of outrun your genetics or whatever you think it may be. You can change the trajectory of your child's life and your life.
Can one of you all type it in the private chat, your information, and then I'll just copy it, put it in here so everybody can see it. So I follow them, you all, on Instagram, and I learned different things. Well, that's how we got to this point. Because I was like, oh, they're talking about anxiety today. Yeah, we should have.
Yep.
I definitely hope that you all that are watching and that will watch this afterwards have learned something. Two very knowledgeable people. Well, three if I include myself, but as far as the doctors, they are very knowledgeable. Hold on. I'm going to copy this because I want to make sure you all get this information.
And just to reiterate, there are a lot of options. Western medicine and medication has its place, especially if you need to, hold the dam and keep someone from injuring themselves or someone else. But there are so many more things we can do with just maybe even changing your diet, lifestyle, some supplements. There's so many things in our wheelhouse that can really shift your well-being, how you feel, and therefore how you feel about yourself and your challenges in your life at hand.
Absolutely. I just want to make sure I'm copying it. I put it on. We're actually on Twitch and we're also on Facebook on my 1SingingLady page. But I was just putting the information on one. But I want to make sure that I put it on all, just in case somebody does want to contact you there as well, because I think it is important. Again, thank you all both for being there or being here. Before we get off, I always share you all, if you all want to follow me on Instagram, with Stigma Breakers. I was telling you about that, but if you want to follow me on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. I love TikTok, y'all. I'm getting into TikTok.
Oh, that's fun.
It's been a lot of fun, surprisingly. You all can go to my website, which is lisalgilliam.com, and my music and poetry are there. I have a couple of CDs out and a single And then I also sell doTERRA. I don't know how you all feel about essential oils, but they have been
it's all up into our office and our houses. We use it.
they have been very helpful for me to calm down and just so that's good to know. I probably should have asked about that, earlier. Again, if you want to connect with me, you can go to solo.2/1SingingLady. All of my links are there, whether it's music. I'm on Pandora and Apple and iTunes and Tidal, wherever you listen to music, Spotify, you can find me there, whatever. I would appreciate you all support. And we're just here to do it together. You know what I mean? That's all we can do. Dr. McCannon said, great evening and great job, ladies. And who is that?
Oh, Dr. Sansa.
Great info, ladies. Thank you all for watching. And Eric went to Deal. I think he went to Wilson too. But I went to Coolidge. But anyway, Eric said hello. Deal buddies. And so
yes.
So it's always good to see people. I can say this, the one thing about this is also brought people closer, like that you haven't been able to talk to. And so I hope that they do something like this in Maryland. Y'all talk to some doctors up here.
we will, yes. And by the way, Wilson's about to change his name.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we're getting rid of Woodrow Wilson. There was a thing where you could vote to change the name. August Wilson, I think, was running high on the list. But there were
that would be great. I was in fences when I was in school. I love me some August Wilson. That would be awesome. That would be awesome. So you all hold on one second. I am going to so this, I told y'all I get to be a part of everything. So I'm going to actually close this out, but I wanted to do this so that I wanted to do it this way. Okay, so thank you all for there. You all hold on one second. Thank you all for watching 1SingingLady out. We'll see you next Wednesday.